Welcome everybody to the Castlevania Nocturne Roundtable Season 2, Electric Boogaloo, yay! I am here with two fellow hardcore Castlevania fans, Stocke and Sindravania, and I figured we'd take a little bit of time. We did this last year for Season 1, and I thought it was a lot of fun, and it was just a great opportunity for us to kind of get together and chat about the show that is based on these games that we love. So we're continuing that with the Season 2 breakdown. Before we get into the show, let's start with some brief introductions. So Sindra, can you kind of tell us like who you are and where we can find you on the web?
Yeah, I am just a big old Castlevania lore nerd. I am at Sindravania Projects on YouTube, and yeah, I just am a big history buff with regards to the series, and a bunch of other game series too: Resident Evil, Silent Hill, hell, Mortal Kombat. Yes. I get into the lore about damn near everything. It just interests me, but specifically with Castlevania, I like making videos about just kind of some obscure topics, some not so obscure, just kind of little discussion blurbs, and I publish them on YouTube for others to partake. So yeah, at Sindravania Projects on YouTube, and I'm also at Sindravania on both, well, still Twitter, and Blue Sky as well.
Right.
So,
yep,
yeah.
Still rocking the old Twitter, same here, yeah. Stocke, how about you?
Yes, I'm never calling it that other name, but yeah, my name is Stocke. I'm a big fan of Castlevania as well, just like these two fabulous people, and it's so, I cannot believe it's already been since 2023, since we last talked as we were speaking about off camera. And I make videos on Castlevania. It's been a little bit since I posted a main video, but I am working on a couple of things that I'm very excited to present. And, you know, this series means so much to us, and I think we come at this from a place of really of care to what Castlevania is. I try to present a lot of things about Castlevania that I find interesting myself, like a lot of the lore, and Sindravania and Dongle, both of the people I'm speaking with, are huge inspirations to me in that aspect. You know, seeing their work, I took a lot of inspiration from that, and kind of seeing what Netflixvania is doing as well, or the Netflix show, it incites so much to talk about, just because of how much we all adore this series. I am on Twitter and YouTube, and I can't wait to discuss it with everyone. Yeah, but yeah, it's a good time. I'm working on a lot, even though I haven't posted in a bit. But it's exciting to work on it. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you guys are interested in their channels, links down below. Just go to the description, and you can click away and go check out their awesome content. So let's get right into it. I figure we'll do an introduction for what is Netflixvania. So if you are jumping into this show and you've never seen it before, and you did not watch our Season 1 breakdown roundtable, Stocke is going to fill us in for what is Netflixvania.
The history of Netflixvania is a little complicated, especially to get to what Nocturne is specifically, because to get a little bit nerdy about it, it started as a movie concept years and years ago, and I want to say probably like 2007, 2008, near the end of when the DS titles were coming out. I read a Koji Igarashi interview a couple months ago where they're asking him about, oh, how's the movie going? And he's like, I can't talk about it. You know, this has been something, I guess what Nocturne has turned into, and the things in relation to Nocturne, what it's turned into has been something in development for a really, really long time. And eventually that movie script turned into the original Netflixvania, or the original Castlevania that premiered on Netflix, with people like Adi Shankar producing it. And he's a very interesting figure. There's there was an intention, I don't know if you guys know this as well, but there was an intention originally for this to be in the same universe as his Devil May Cry show, and I don't think that's the case anymore with how everything proceeded nowadays. Yeah, dude, I saw this interview with him, and this was like 7 years ago when Season 1 of Netflixvania came out, and he's like, this is the bootleg universe. I think it's safe to say a lot of those plans have not come into fruition, especially because many of the creatives that were involved in the original Castlevania, a lot of the head creatives, like Adi Shankar and the previous writer, are no longer involved in Nocturne, which is the main topic of today. And so this is a sequel series. Yeah, darn, right?
Oh, shoot.
But, yeah, this is the sequel series, a little bit like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, continuing the original show. I want to say about 300 years later, inside the narrative, very loosely using the Castlevania mythology, the game's mythology, as a basis for what they're doing here. Yeah. And so this is a sequel series and of the original. And they both have their pros and cons. I'm sure we'll get into it, but that is what Nocturne is. It is the sequel to the original.
Yeah, pretty good breakdown. Yeah, and just to add to that, Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, the NES game, was used as kind of like the adaptation, which is what that movie that you were talking about was originally supposed to be. It was supposed to be an animated
there's a little bit of concept art on it too.
Yeah, and it was written by Warren Ellis, who ended up doing the show, at least for the first 2 seasons of the original Castlevania Netflix show. And then a lot of stuff came out. He left the show for reasons that we're just not going to get into. But I believe Clive Bradley took over the show at that point and was
he was the producer, Kevin something. I forgot his name.
Yeah.
But there was a lot. It's all connected.
Yeah, and it's also worked on by Sam Dietz and Adam Dietz, I believe, who are brothers and also are big Castlevania fans, or at least so they say. And I believe that for the most part, I mean, one of them literally wrote strategy guides for the game, like officially printed strategy guides. So, I think they know their stuff.
I would say they are absolutely fans. I won't begrudge them, their specific tastes in narrative for the shows and whatnot, but there's no doubt they are absolutely fans of the games. We wouldn't be getting the little Easter eggs and little, one-offs and whatnot that we are seeing in the shows without them. So let's, give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, sure. So to break down Nocturne, Sindra's going to kind of take us through season 1 very briefly in terms of a recap. If you want the full story about like how we felt about Nocturne season 1, go check out the Roundtable link down below. But yeah, take us through first off, like what it's based on, or at least what it's very, 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 very loosely based on, and a little bit about the show.
Yeah, lead me there. So Nocturne is loosely based on Castlevania Rondo of Blood, and has connective tissue with other games in the series, just like the original Castlevania Netflix show did as well. So Nocturne goes through this kind of coming of age for Richter Belmont, who is Trevor Belmont's descendant from the first show with Sypha. And he's, gone through some stuff. He saw his mom killed in front of him by a vampire named Ulrox. That is its own thing. He gets shipped off to France, and that's basically what the setting of Nocturne is during the French Revolution in the late 1700s, and takes us through what Richter goes through, and also his adopted sister Maria, and basically they are having to deal with this huge gathering of vampires by this vampire queen, Elizabeth Bathory, who ends up being the big bad of Nocturne. And there's a lot that goes through things. You are introduced to a girl named Annette, who is based on a character in the game in name only. Has her own original backstory now, with her, her friend Edouard. And yeah, this group of bumbling adventurers have to take on this huge big bad vampire queen who is trying to basically blot out the sun. So yeah, a lot of fun there, and yeah, definitely if you want to check out how we thought of going through Nocturne season 1 and our thoughts of that, I would give a listen to our the previous episode of us doing this roundtable.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll also be kind of touching on that throughout the season 2 episode breakdown, which we'll get into in just a minute. When it comes to this show and this breakdown and this roundtable, there are going to be immense spoilers. So if you have not seen season 2 yet, I would highly recommend you pause this video or come back to it after you finish season 2, and that way you can kind of relate to everything that we're about to tell you, because yeah, major spoilers ahead. So let's go through the episode breakdown. I figure I'll start off with episode 1, and then we can kind of go round robin and kind of go from there. Sound good?
Nice. Yep.
Sounds good.
All right. So episode 1 is called A Living Legend, and it takes place initially, like the opening scene 3 years ago. That's what it says. So 3 years prior to the events that took place at the end of season 1, I guess you could say. Alucard, who showed up at the very end of season 1 and was kind of like, he kills Drolta, saves the day, so to speak, so that they could kind of run away safely. He visits Sekhmet's tomb, Sekhmet being the goddess that Erzsebet is getting her power from. So Alucard visits Sekhmet's tomb to find that the blood of Sekhmet is still there in bottled form. So just hanging out, chilling in bottled, in bottles, just blood everywhere on all these containers. Terra, who is Maria's mother, who is an unwilling servant now of Erzsebet after being turned into a vampire at the end of season 1 to save Maria, because basically they decided, well, there's no way that we can all escape, so just turn me into a vampire so you don't have to turn Maria into one. So anyways, Terra is an unwilling servant of Erzsebet as the sun rises once more. So basically, Erzsebet used up all her power and is now drained of power, and because of that, the original the sun is no longer in eclipse. It's no longer blocked out. So now vampires have to hide again, and until she regains strength so that she can, shut down the sun once more. Alucard informs Richter that they need to go to Paris to find the soul of Sekhmet. That's the vibe that I got. It was a little confusing, the whole thing with Sekhmet.
I think it was actually her heart, her body.
Her heart is inside this mummy in Paris.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
I think it was her mother, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That she put her heart inside. It was very, and like Mizrak says in the first episode, it's a tradition for that kind of religion, I believe.
Right. Yeah. A lot of my notes here are like me trying to piece this together while I'm watching it too. So like, bear with me. That's why I have two wonderful people to kind of steer the ship and correct me with what I've written. So Erzsebet grieves the loss of Drolta, forcing Emmanuel, who is Maria's father, and also a priest who is using this night creature machine to create night creatures to basically wage war against hell, I suppose. So she forces Emmanuel to resurrect her using the night creature creation machine. So he sticks Drolta in that machine. Now, he even says at the beginning of right before he puts her in, he's like, listen, she doesn't have a soul. That's the whole purpose of this machine, is that if you don't have a soul, you can't turn into a night creature. So despite the lack of soul, she is remade into a night creature and is apparently the strongest night creature ever, because all the other night creatures get taken out like lickety split, but no, Drolta.
I mean,
reasons.
Are you surprised?
I'm not.
It's just like Rondo of Blood, right?
You're right.
My goodness.
Maria goes off on her own little adventure to join the soldiers in the French Revolution after, kind of getting mad at Richter. They kind of have it out where she blames Richter for the loss of her mother because of, hey, you were passed out. What am I going to do? Leave you there? Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Misplaced anger, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit of forced conflict, I felt like as well there, yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Did not come across that genuine.
Yeah. Yeah. Like she should be understanding that she was knocked out and there was nothing that she could have done. Richter had to save her and did so. So
well, let's all keep in mind, if we're being realistic about this, she's a 16-year-old girl who just learned her mom basically died.
Right.
And not only that, is coming back as a vampire who, for all they know, is completely evil.
Right.
So, she's traumatized. And yeah, like you said, misplaced anger, I think, is the emphasis. And, I think in this situation, it makes sense. In other situations in the future,
later,
not so much. Yeah.
Not maybe less so, but that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about this one. So
yeah. Annette receives a vague message from beyond that we don't quite understand yet, and that is a theme that you will see throughout this entire show. Of
over and over again.
Over and over again. And that leads us to episode 2, which I guess either Stocke or Sindra, take it away.
I could take it if you guys would like. So this episode 2, Angel of Death, I did want to add about Emmanuel, ignoring his relations or his similarities to Shaft. I think as a sequel to the original show, having him be like this messed up Forge Master, kind of doing what Isaac and Hector were doing, but in such an unnatural way where he's forcing these creatures to become more hideous monsters, not necessarily taking souls from hell like Isaac and Hector were in the original show. I think, him using this machine, it's very, very forced, and you see like they're in agony when they're coming back to life. I think that was actually pretty interesting, especially not necessarily didn't really feel like Castlevania, but as a continuation for things that they were doing and establishing in the original show, I thought Emmanuel and this machine, it was very, I thought that was very, very interesting. But as far as episode 2, it starts with Drolta's backstory, and as we'll see, Drolta is so much more of an important character in this season than the previous one, and I don't know if that was necessarily because of her popularity, because she was like an inquisitor. She did get a lot of screen time in season 1, but here there is a lot more emphasis on what she's doing, on her character, on her motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
you see that right at the beginning. You see that right at the beginning of episode 2.
Yeah,
I put in my notes
all the episodes
for a little bit.
Like as the episodes go on, you learn a little bit more at the beginning of each episode about Drolta's kind of path to where she ended up in the show later in the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As
her origin.
As she is as a human in the 1100s Egypt, and as this priestess of Sekhmet, and then everything that goes downhill from there, and just gets corrupted, and just kind of goes to hell. So that's what you learn in season 2.
A lot of my notes here are ramblings in a way, but just before
mine too, definitely.
Before I give it back to you, I wrote, I'll just read this first part. Drolta became a vampire back in the 1100s. Why?
To become stronger.
I guess.
But that was literally her stated reason. She either, for reasons, decided that because the temple got ransacked, she needed to be stronger to serve Sekhmet and protect, all the people who the temple serves. Because I guess they're healers or whatever, which is, that makes sense. But she decides to do this by killing a vampire that is still around ransacking the temple and uses his blood to become a vampire.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, and then, everything kind of gets very off kilter from there.
Yeah.
Agreed.
In a very I don't know, confusing way in my thoughts, but whatever. We can continue to discuss that through the episodes.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think there's something interesting inherently about having this, vampire that's lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, starting in Egypt. And that's cool, especially because Castlevania, the game series, the mainline series, has some interesting ties with things like Egypt. I mean, I was looking as they were showing all this imagery of Egypt, like for the boss, I forgot her name in Portrait of Ruin, that seduces Jonathan in that one boss fight, which is really fun.
Astarte.
Yes, I saw. I was like, that was via so very easy reference, but I did not see it anywhere. And then in my poor notes, I'm like, is Galamoth in the background anywhere? But he definitely is not. That's just me being delusional.
I would have loved that.
That would have been great.
Oh gosh.
Oh, it would have been great, but only if it was Galamoth from Kid Dracula. That really.
Exactly.
Only if it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And that would make the lore of Kid Dracula even better. It's really interesting too.
Just as a hieroglyph in the background would have been amazing.
Oh, that would have been sweet. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, I was looking out for it, but it's unfortunate. But Drolta as a character is much. We learn so much about her. She eventually becomes. I guess I could spoil it, but eventually you'll see.
We'll get to it.
An antagonist, and but for the rest of episode 2, we are reintroduced to Juiced, and I do want to highlight. I think as for praise anyway, I think Juiced is like my favorite character in this show, and I don't know if you guys would necessarily agree, but I think if anything, the unique ideas that they present with Juiced is most in line with things that felt like Castlevania. He's continuing from his perspective some kind of alternate Netflixvania version of the bad ending of Harmony of Dissonance. And basically what that means is that from his perspectives, from Juiced, it's like everything that happens in his game that it is based on, everything bad that could have happened. And I think that's an interesting perspective to come at this from.
He got the best ending, and then he got the worst ending.
Oh, right, yeah.
Back to back.
Yeah, it's but there's things that Juice talks most, I would say, out of anyone besides probably Alucard, about the legacy of the Belmonts and the history of the series, especially because there's such a huge, gigantic gap that annoyed me, and I'm sure we'll get into it later, between the original series and Nocturne. There's like 300 years of stuff that they never talk about again. I mean, don't even get me started on the Morning Star and what the Infinite Quarter was, and Dracula and all that kind of stuff.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah.
But yeah, Juiced. I did enjoy Juiced. I think out of everyone, the unique ideas that he presented was most in line with things that had to do with Castlevania. And then, Alucard, Annette, and Richter go to Paris to find the mummy with, I believe, Elizabeth. I was going to say Elizabeth Bartley, but Elizabeth Bartholey.
Elizabeth Bathory.
Thank you, Tonga. But yeah, so they go to Paris to find the heart. And Juiced also. Oh, Sindravania, I saw your short on this as well with Juiced and the Ring. Do you want to explain that?
Oh, just so it ends. This is a thing that happens in episode 2. He ends up donning his original an outfit that looks very much to his original in the game of Harmony of Dissonance. Goes to Liddy's grave, just to tell her he has to get back into the fight, and then he goes to, I guess it's a mausoleum or a crypt of some sort, and gets a ring out of there, that behind a rock that holds the Belmont
like a
crest.
Stone, yeah. Did it say Liddy's name?
No, it didn't. It just had the Belmont crest on it.
That's
right. Liddy's name was just on the
tombstone.
on the tombstone.
Yeah.
I would have expected a Maxim reference, like on somewhere written, but I don't think there was any.
There wasn't that I saw, but
No.
So he takes the ring, and it looks like a combination of the designs of the two bands of brotherhood that Juiced and Maxim have in Harmony of Dissonance, and it ends up playing what I think is a pretty big role later in a later episode. I think it is, what causes Juice to kind of snap out of his bad ending funk, I guess is the best way of putting it. Which is, snaps him out of it and allows him to regain his magic again, just like, the bracelets were able to snap Maxim out of his possession by the Dracula Wraith in the game.
Yeah,
Agreed, yeah. That's cool.
Just a theory, but the closest one I could come with, and I like the theme. If that was intentional, then I absolutely give kudos to the team.
I would give credit as well. I think, especially because I like Harmony of Dissonance. I know some people don't.
I love that game. It's my favorite of the Game Boy Advance games.
More than Aria? Oh, wow.
Well, I don't really like the Sorrow games.
That's right. I remember. Yeah.
They're just too far away from Castlevania to me. Like, it's just, I don't know. I mean, that's just me. I know I'm in the minority.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
We all have our hot takes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But especially with Castlevania. But yeah, for the I remembered that I didn't know at the time. I wasn't I put in my notes like, what is that? What is this referring to? Because I knew that ring was a reference to something. And seeing Sindravania's short and this other video I saw on social media was like, oh, I put it together, and I remembered the friendship bracelets. I'm working on a video about Castlevania Grimoire of Souls, the mobile game, and in that game there is the item. They have new artwork with Maxim and Juiced with those bracelets, and I guess they turned it into a ring here. But there is some connective tissue with the source material, which I did think was I did appreciate. But yeah, for the rest of episode 2, since we've been on this one for a bit, they go to Paris, Alucard, Annette, and Richter, and then there's like the battle at the end where you see the French Revolution take more of a presence than it definitely did in season 1, where Drolta is just having a field day with these troopers until she kills them all, and Mizrak is trying to get in there, and Olrak and Mizrak is a whole other thing as well, but they're present during that. Honestly, to touch on Olrak and Mizrak quickly, I think, and this is going to be a hot take at least for me, I think Mizrak is most interesting when he's not interacting with Olrak's, because their relationship feels very forced in my opinion. I feel like it happened very, very quickly, and it did not feel genuine to the point where I'm convinced that these two people are in love.
Yeah, there's a scene in episode 3, which we'll get into in just a minute, where and I'll touch on it because it's just or somebody can based on what I wrote, because it just didn't make any sense to me. But one thing I wanted to also mention about episode 2 is at the end, when Drolta's having a field day with these troops, she's basically bulletproof and swordproof now. One of the soldiers stabs her with a sword, and the sword literally shatters. And I was just kind of like, why? Like, that is a consistent issue that I have, is things happen that shouldn't happen, and you're just kind of like, why? And maybe I'm nitpicking. Maybe I'm just sitting here like, looking. I'm not intentionally looking for things to nitpick. I loved the first series. Like, overall, I thought that a lot of the changes that they made were positive. But there is a significant difference between Nocturne and the original series, which we'll get into, I'm sure, and share our opinions. But I also wanted to mention real quick about the throwback to Maria's old costume from the games. That
was cute.
She's visiting her house to get some things because she's going to go off and fight this war. And Juiced is basically a babysitter for her throughout the full show. And you see, like, on the bed, she picks up her old costume from the games, and she just kind of like, bleh, like, this is gross, kind of, looking at it, which I thought was kind of a fun Easter egg. But anyways, episode 3, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, Drolta annihilated the French army troops, and that was a fun little display of overpower, but whatever. Yeah, we basically just, it continues on these separate storylines. Ulrax is, playing the... I'm not quite sure what they were doing with Ulrax in this series, because basically they have him just kind of bouncing between, he's just kind of there, between Erzsébet's court and kind of stalking Mizrak, and just kind of going back and forth with that, and not anything else. I mean,
I have a theory on that, which I mentioned in our private chat. If I could just interject, I think they were trying to play him off as a snake, because that is his kind of like metamorphic ability to transform into this giant snake, which you see later in the show. You saw it in the first season, and I really think they just tried to hit home with like the metaphor of, not only is he a snake that can, he can literally transform into a snake, but he's also a snake because he wants to, kind of have his cake and eat it too. He wants to play both sides in the sense that he wants to stay in the loop for what's happening with Erzsébet and the clan, but also he is kind of sort of a good guy with Mizrak.
Dare I say, anti-hero?
I guess what I'm getting at is he had a lot more development in season 1 than he had in season 2, and
agreed.
I guess that is fair when you have this many characters that you're trying to tell this many stories with. So I get it. Something had to give. It was just and Mizrak, man. He was just hot and cold the entire season.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I love you. Oh, I hate you. Oh, you have a soul. Oh, you don't have a soul. Dude, just make up your damn mind.
Right.
It's literally, it literally felt like puppy love, to be honest.
It was like, I believe the term is Tsunadiri. Hot and cold is that term.
He knows he's a vamp. He knows he's a vampire.
He knows.
And yet all of a sudden he's like, how could you not be sympathetic to the death of the French soldiers? Like, dude, he's a vampire. He literally kills people for breakfast.
So anyway, and then we have Maria and Tara interacting more. Tara has reintroduced herself to Maria since becoming a vampire, and Maria is trying to make some kind of normalcy out of this very not normal situation, especially since Richter isn't there. Basically, nobody else is there but Mizrak looking after her. So she's got nobody, and now she's got her vampire mom kind of stalking around. But
what about Juice? Juice is there, no?
Give me a second.
Later,
okay. Give me a second. I'm leading into that is basically what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And then, later on, you see Tara trying to give Maria magic lessons, and Juiced intercepts because now Juiced has, decided he wants to be involved in the battles. And of course, he has this connection with Tara, and they fight, which you saw in the trailers and whatnot. And it's meant to be this whole big thing, but it does end up showing that Tara does still have, like, some of her humanity still, because she chooses not to bite or attack Juiced when she's got him down. So that creates conflict, obviously, because it kind of raises the question, well, what do vampires have if not souls? If they're able to love and this, that, and the other thing. That kind of a moral quandary.
I think they say that too. Don't they say that in the show?
They do. They try to very
in the first episode, I believe.
Yeah. Alucard is talking to Maria. They try to very lightly touch upon. Well, Dracula loved his mother, so if anything can redeem a vampire, it's love, and that's what they're trying to show is the difference between the good vampires or good-ish vampires and the bad vampires, because apparently all the bad vampires don't love.
Right.
Or I don't know. That's.
I think it came across well with Dracula in the original, but here it doesn't really work, in my opinion, with Tara.
it does and it doesn't. But they kind of they don't use it very to its full potential, I suppose.
That's
they kind
true. I
of,
agree.
and
Yeah.
that ends up happening. That ends up being a thing later. So, and the episode basically ends with Juste, Terra, and Maria finding out that the dead French troops have been resurrected as night creatures via the Abbot Emmanuel. And Maria gets super fired up and decides she's gonna go kill her dad. And
is this the episode where Terra is teaching her how to use like the darker magic too? Like
yes.
She's in that little like circle area where she's just like summoning all these like little bad creatures, and she can't really handle it, so to speak, like initially. Yeah. So
this is that's what Terra is giving her magic lessons on, is tapping into dark magic. So basically she goes Dark Maria, or has that duality, which, was never a thing in the games. Maria could only ever summon, the 4 iterations of the Chinese deities.
Yeah. It also doesn't make any sense in the sense that why would Terra, who is trying to regain some of her humanity and have a good relationship with Maria, why would she then go, oh, you want to learn about black dark magic or whatever? Let me teach you. Like,
I mean, I think that might be the whole, well, she is still a vampire, so she still leans dark, I guess is the best way of putting that. Or that is, or at least I think that is what they are how they're trying to frame that is, well, there's this conflict with Terra now because she is a vampire, but she still loves, her family and her friends. So, they're trying to play off of that, I think, and, your mileage may vary on how you feel about that, but it does end up with Maria having now access to dark summons on top of, her previous light summons. So that's how that episode ends, and also Olrox gets branded because he needs to prove his loyalty to Erzsébet.
Yeah.
And especially now because Drolta is super mega powered.
Yeah.
So, yep, that happened too.
Okay. All right, moving on to episode 4, which is titled Monstrous Things. In 1614, we have an initial throwback again to Drolta as she visits a human Erzsébet Bathory, proclaiming herself her servant because she did bad things to good people. They're trying to make Maria look angry, but it just kind of looks like she has dirt on her face. So basically she goes to, I believe this is the episode where she goes to take out her dad, take out Emmanuel, because she's angry. She blames him for the loss of her mother as a vamp, which justifiably so. The art, which we'll talk about the art later, but they do end up killing her father. And I mean, it's justified in the sense that, sure, it makes sense why she did it. But the whole time, so Juste is there, and he's kind of like telling her, don't do this. Like, you're not going to get anything out of this. You're not going to feel better doing it, and she does it. There's some... Yeah. There's just, is what it is.
It's I feel like the whole Dark Maria arc was just conflict for the sake of it, largely, Yeah,
I agree.
Her she again has this kind of weird temperament where she's just angry all the time. She's just a very angry teenage girl with a lot of firepower and apparently no impulse control. Is what I took away from that. Everything that she's been around with her mom and Richter. No, apparently impulse control is not one of her strong suits. So yeah, she just goes. She decides to fully tap into her dark powers, summons a dragon, and just emulates her father. Right. And that's a whole pig to do and then we see this kind of shadowy dude take his charred body away.
I thought for sure that was going to be his turning into Shaft.
Yeah.
That was the road that they led me down. And even in season 1, I think I said this in the first roundtable that we did. I was like Emmanuel's going to turn into Shaft. Like I can.
Yeah, that was my crackpot theory as well, because they were setting up for it so much.
That would have been nice.
That
would have been nice.
But,
and that
there was no intention, I don't think, in either of these seasons for that to happen.
Shaft was such a big
unfortunately.
part of Rondo, and it's like if they're adapting Rondo, where does Shaft play into that? And it turns out he doesn't.
He doesn't.
At all. Not at all. Shaft got shafted.
Right. So there's this thing that takes away the charred, dusty remains of Emmanuel by Felicia, and just saves Maria from the dragon turning on her. So basically, she can't control the dragon that she's unleashed. And so
Dare I believe.
Yeah.
If it's anything like the games, for Celestial Beasts.
Yeah. So she gets saved. Terra shows up and basically is like, send Maria somewhere safe. And she just then tells Terra that these monsters that Maria is summoning, these dark monsters, are going to destroy her eventually. And Maria gives just the cold shoulder, just like, like,
well, yeah, like
whatever, Gramps,
Yeah, again, it's the angsty teenager, with a lot of trauma, unnecessary trauma, but that's how that goes.
So Mizrak reappears only to deny Ulrox, but again, there's just this, as you guys said, cold shoulder, hot, like, what's going on, dude?
Whatever.
Yeah, Annette admits that she's seeing spirits, which we did kind of see at the end of episode 3. Again, we're seeing these spirits show up that only she can see, and yet she's not saying anything about it because she doesn't know what it is. And so Richter's kind of like, why didn't you tell us that this was happening? And she's like, I didn't know what they wanted. But nobody knew what they wanted. You still don't really know. Predictably, Drolta shows up just as they find Sekhmet's body in the Louvre in Paris, and there's a big fight. Drolta escapes with Sekhmet's body, and Annette freaks out over the spirits, and Alucard ends up underwater after failing to reclaim Sekhmet. So there's this big fight that happens, and Alucard is no match for Drolta at this point. So, yeah.
When Alucard was flying, I was like, okay, are they going to do, like in Symphony of the Night, when you press down and up, it's a super jump for Alucard. And in something like Dawn of Sorrow, you press the left trigger and he does that super jump.
Yeah.
When Alucard flies up to catch Jolta, I was like, oh man, I hope they make him do the pose when he super jumps, because he's literally flying in the air. And I think levitation and flying are pretty different. So it was kind of weird for him to just turn into Superman for a moment there. And I thought that was a little odd,
the show overall feels less grounded than the original.
It's the rule of cool. It will do what it wants if it's cool. That's a reoccurring thing in all of Nocturne, where it's like that meme, like, do y'all have good writing? It's like, no, but we have hype moments and aura, if you guys have seen that meme. But it's I feel like that's a prevailing thing with all of Nocturne. Like, yes, it's cool, but does this make sense when you really think about it? Is this even Castlevania when you really think about it? And those answers will depend.
It feels like the original series is The Matrix, and and Nocturne is the sequels to Matrix. Basically.
Yes, Matrix Reloaded is goated though, but the rest,
like the Superman fights where, like, you've got these, very anime-esque Dragon Ball Z kind of fights with people jumping into the air and shooting fireballs at each other and all this other stuff. It felt very overblown, and the anime influences this time around were definitely a lot higher.
Oh, come on. You know that you got excited about some of those fights.
They were very hype moments.
Did. There was some very good moments. We all can say that.
The animation is spectacular.
I will 100% admit that the fight scenes in this show were the best part of the show, and there were
Absolutely.
there were several fight scene moments where I was just like, oh, like literally out loud, just getting giddy and excited. Particularly like Juiced when he did the 1,000 daggers.
Oh yes, that was cool.
Like,
Yeah. That actually is Castlevania.
I'm literally
as well.
getting goosebumps talking about
in
it.
Blades.
Like that scene. Just like Maria using the dragon and doing like those poses where Maria's doing the poses and the dragon's doing the poses. Like all of that was sick. Like don't get me wrong, the fight scenes were incredible. They were really cool. Yeah. So I will say that 100%. Anyways.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the end of episode 4. I know you wanted to mention something about the music. I don't know if you want to wait until
I'll wait until the end. We can run.
We can probably wait till the end for stuff like that. Yeah.
All right. So episode 5, Into the Abyss. Who wants to cover that one? Stocke?
Right? Yeah, Stocke. You get it.
Stocke. Okay.
Oh yeah. So this one after and I will say for the Terra and for the Terra Juiced and like when she's killing Emmanuel and stuff, I think Emmanuel in general was kind of a very missed potential character, not only because of what they, the Shaft stuff that just never comes into fruition, and Old Man Coyote / Mephistopheles kind of just being bait for season 3, in my opinion.
Oh,
because it's like Force Awakens. If you guys have seen the Star Wars movie, it's like, what is this? Good question for another time. Like we're just not getting any of those answers here, and I think that's something that Nocturne is really it really hinders the writing in a lot of moments, because there are interesting questions that this entire show presents, even ignoring the original show that this is the sequel of. There are interesting new stuff that's here, and we just don't get answers for like 90% of it. I would say like 95% of it. But as far as episode 5, this one is Into the Abyss. And so Alucard fails catching Drolta. So Drolta has the heart, Elizabeth's mother's heart, so she can turn into the god of the sun. And it's I think this is most all episodes before 7 and 8, which are definitely the best ones just because of the action alone. It's a real slow burn, and you really feel that in the moment. I think especially with when a lot of people are talking about Nocturne in general, they are not talking about episodes 1 through 6.
Yeah.
Because it is so, and I love, slow burns. I'm a JRPG fan. I can enjoy stuff like, old movies. I mean, I like a Kurosawa and stuff like that. I can enjoy a good slow burn if there's payoff to it, if there's something heart and genuine, and seeds that are planted that can turn into something bigger. And I really do not feel like Nocturne delivered on that at all. And by episode 5, I'm just writing in my notes, like, just for example, I'm like, when does this start? And I think the references and stuff can only go so far, because this is supposed to be about Castlevania, and when it does not do nods to Castlevania, it's like, this is so cool. But that could be that in an alternate universe, if the movie happened or something like that. I feel like it wouldn't even have gotten to the point. I feel like it could have been something so much more faithful, and I'm sure we'll get into it later.
Yeah.
But by episode 5, I was not feeling well, because they're just going all over the place. And then Elizabeth is this the episode, I believe, where she eats the heart, so she transforms into the or that might be the next one. I
believe that's the next episode.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, but the villains are near succeeding, and there are moments between Richter and Annette, and their dynamic in general, I think, is interesting, to put it kindly.
Well,
because
I'm sorry. I was going to say, yeah, they basically have this little montage with her and Richter. This is like their episode for getting close to each other, because they're going to try and hook up with the actual like French revolutionaries like Robespierre and all them. And Alucard's like, yeah, in the meantime, go fight some vampires. Go fight vampires. They go do that. They have all this bonding time. It's whatever. You gotta do that somewhere. I get it.
There's a moment for Alucard where he's like, do you remember this? Okay, there's a scene where they're on a boat, and it's Annette, Richter, and Alucard.
Yeah.
And there's people that are you can see they're like hanged. They've been hanged in the trees, and there's more that's being chased by vampires. And Richter's like, okay, we have to help them. And then Alucard, of all people, the man at least in the original series, the only thing it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Alucard, of all people, is like, no, we can't help them. We're gonna get distracted. We can't. We have to go. I was like, are you kidding me? Don't get me wrong. I think Alucard in this series and Alucard in the mainline series, and that's the same for each character and their counterpart. They are different characters. The only one that I could see similar being is maybe Juiced, and that's if I'm feeling kind that day. So I felt like that was a really, really weird characterization for some Alucard stuff, and a lot of things. There's a lot of moments like that in this show that I was pretty disappointed in. But yeah, as far as episode 5 goes, there are more moments of Richter and Annette and their relationship growing and bonding, while the bad guys are getting closer and closer to succeed. And I think the next one, is where stuff really starts to kick in.
Is this the episode that has the braiding hair joke?
Oh, that's I think that's the next one. Yeah, that conversation was okay, I think. But one of the other things that bothers me about Nocturne as well is that I want to say everyone speaks very, very similarly. It was a little worse in the original show with everyone cursing left and right.
Yes.
But someone like Alucard, someone so elegant, even someone like Dracula, I hope Dracula doesn't curse in the original show, because if anything, I think the writing in general is kind of a downgrade, especially when you compare it to like season 1 and 2 and stuff like that.
100%.
There are moments in the original show that I genuinely like. There's one with Isaac and the pirate captain. That scene is incredible. I will go for that scene, just for example. And there's not really moments like that in Nocturne. The best moments in Nocturne have to do with moments that are in relation to the previous series, because that was actually, parts of it were well written, I dare say, even as far as an adaptation. But this didn't really feel like an adaptation. And by episode 5, I was really not into it, especially because of this came out January 16th, and oh my gosh, I pulled an all-nighter to watch this, so this was an insane night for me. The next episode 6, is when the Switch to it got announced, and then later, rest in peace, David Lynch passed away. So it was like so much happened. It was crazy. But yeah, as for Nocturne, definitely not feeling it going into episode 6.
Yeah, this is like episode 5. This is right around the time where Olrox basically just disappears. He gets on a boat, and you think he's gone, only for him to make a return later on, and which we'll get into. But yeah, this is more or less just Maria, going further along that path that she was leading down, and as the episodes kind of progress, she starts to become more like herself, I think, maybe coming to terms and accepting once Terra kind of runs away and is like, I need to find myself, and then runs away.
Well, I believe episode 5 is when Maria completely cracks and even, wants her mother to turn her into a vampire. Also,
that scene.
Because she's, whatever, you think what you will about the scene, it was just like, it is they're trying to show how absolutely unhinged she's become, without having any of her support system, except, she doesn't really know Juice. She doesn't, up until this point, she doesn't.
A while ago,
there's no indication that she ever met Juiced, whenever Terra met up with him in previous years. So, so she's feeling alone, and she, she just goes completely unhinged, and this is when Terra finally makes up her damn mind and decides, no, this is bad. I have to get away. You have to stop being, going down this dark path, and I need to leave, and you can't follow me. I'm not good for you.
Right.
And that's the last of Terra, at least, for now. She just up and just abandons Maria, and of course Maria acts in turn. So, that's pretty much the lowest Maria gets, and then episode 6 is when she starts attempting to pick herself back up.
What's going on with Richter and Annette at this point in episode 5? I'm trying to remember. This is where the show kind of gets fuzzy for episode 5.
So they were fighting vampires. They followed some into sewers underneath the city, and that's when she has her epiphany about what her ancestors are trying to tell her. All these spirits of her ancestors have been trying to tell her is that she needs to find the apparent third piece of Sekhmet.
Yeah.
That because the earlier episodes talked about the Ba and the Ka, which are the two pieces, but now there's this other third piece that she just kind of stumbles upon. So that's what they're up to after they have had a bit of bonding time.
This reminds me of Lady in the Water, which is an absolutely terrible movie. But there's a scene where there's like a cereal box and like the answers to, I can't remember the movie, but basically the answers to what they needed were in this cereal box, and it very much feels like they're just kind of making stuff up as they go along.
Yeah, that was kind of a stretch.
Yeah.
Everything is like a setup for the last two. I feel like they wrote the last two like to have that Alucard and Richter duo set piece, for example, and then everything else is just like, okay, how do we get to that?
Right.
How do we fill this time? And it's like, oh gosh.
Yeah, it did feel like a leap in logic and reasoning. Just this is what you figure out just by hanging around your ancestors.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that works out, and that's how we get into episode 6.
Yeah, just kind of.
There is a funny reference to Final Fantasy 16 when Richter's going down the sewer. He puts like a flame in his hand, and that's exactly what Clive does in Final Fantasy 16, which I thought was pretty funny.
Okay. Of course.
There's a little Easter egg to that game, which I enjoyed.
Reference Final Fantasy, but not Castlevania,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll see that later too with the Dark Souls later.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll just go through episode 6 real quickly. There are two things that you need to know about episode 6, which is Ancestors is the title of the episode. One, Annette goes on a big ol' spirit journey.
Yep.
And 2,
Big might be an understatement.
I mean, it took up a fair chunk of the episode.
Yeah, it was.
Let's be honest here. It was a fair chunk of the episode that was just dedicated to this literal spirit journey that Annette now has to go on to seek the actual third soul of Sekhmet in the spirit realm. So this whole episode is her doing that. Meanwhile, the other two things that are happening are Maria is able to kind of pull herself back up from the abyss and tap into her, memories of growing up, of her family, Richter and Tara and whatnot. And she regains access back to her light magic, her light summons. So that's good. And then Erzsébet eats the heart of Sekhmet, and so she's got 2 parts of the 3 now, and becomes big old cat lady again, even bigger, better. Yeah. Selectively. Just such a weird design, honestly. I've always thought it's been a weird design for her, like her boss mode in both the first
combination lion. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense because isn't like Sekhmet like a lion?
The god is like a lion. It's a cat lion thing, something like that.
She is a lion-headed goddess. Yes, she is very much feline-oriented, much like Bast. But the only cat thing she actually has on her and this is the one that doesn't bother me, is her nose. Everything else about it, like the weird, like her being super tall with super distorted anatomical lengths, like her abdomen's super long. She's the hair, she's got like a widow's peak. It was weird in the first season, and they just continued it in the second season, which again, that's just my opinion. Your mileage may vary. Others may think it's cool, whatever. I thought it was just a very weird choice that I thought they could have done better, but whatever.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's also worth noting in this episode that while Annette is basically on a giant spirit quest, her body is physically present. They're hanging out in what I think is like an abandoned shop.
Yeah. I think it's Richter and Alucard just basically have downtime in this abandoned shop while Annette's doing her spirit journey.
Yep.
Ta-da!
Yeah, that's it.
And that's episode 6 for you.
Yeah.
That's really all it comes down to.
It's not even
whatever.
That's just what happens.
So that leads us right into episode 7.
Yep.
And that's when things really start picking up.
Episode 7.
It's a little late, but it finally does. Yeah.
Yeah, and that episode 7 is titled. Is it Grenade Alasso?
She pronounces it in the show. I am not going to attempt it because I will butcher it, but yes.
Yeah.
And it's how to put this? Yeah, this is where the show actually begins.
Yeah,
like the show actually woke up and decided to come and present itself. So this is where everything comes together.
It very much feels like at the end of season 1, there's this big fight scene, and everybody kind of goes their separate ways, and this very much feels like a pickup from that moment. Everything else that happens in season 2 felt like padding for this moment.
Absolutely.
Episode 7 was incredible. Definitely the best episode of
huge step up
of all the episodes. I will say that there is still a little bit of Spirit Quest stuff kind of riddled in there. Annette is fighting this like cat lion type thing. I don't even know what it is. It's just this monster.
It is and I can't remember off the top of my head, and I'm sure somebody will comment in the comments to let us know, but it is an Egyptian god of some sort that is keeping Sekhmet's third soul imprisoned or guarded or in punishment of some sort. I didn't quite understand the reasoning behind all of that, but during episode 7, Annette is acting as the defender for Sekhmet while Sekhmet possesses her. Because that's what happened at the end, the culmination of episode 6, is that the third soul, she finds the third soul of Sekhmet in the spirit world, and the soul possesses her. So she's now got 1/3, and supposedly, they kind of make it out to be the quote unquote strongest part.
Right.
But, so in episode 7, you get these cutbacks. One of the fights that is going on is Annette fighting this Egyptian alligator cat lion guardian that's imprisoned Sekhmet in her stead. And so as Annette gets worn down through the course of this battle, that toll is taken on her actual body, which is now possessed by Sekhmet.
Right. Yeah. And this definitely has the best fight scenes in all of, I'd say, the entire Nocturne series overall.
Agreed.
Everybody comes out to play. You've got Just fighting, you've got Alucard fighting, you've got Richter doing some sick magic and whipping and everything. Drolta is there. She's fighting. Pretty much everybody is fighting. Maria's there with her dragon and everything fighting. So it is an epic episode, and it really feels the most like Castlevania in the sense that, there's action and a lot of it. There's
the big boss and the mini boss, and everybody's fighting both of them.
Right. And so initially we all think, Drolta's just like, the mini boss in that sense. But it turns out that Erzbit was the mini boss. It's pretty obvious as the soul portion of Sekhmet, which is now being channeled through Annette, is kind of really beating down on Erzbit's, evil Sekhmet form. and is taking a toll on her. I mean, she like loses an eye, she loses a limb, you know, and while Annette is fighting spiritually with Erzbet, you also have Just and Maria and Alucard and Richter. They're all going after her, in between also fighting Drolta. But what ends up happening is Erzbet loses, and she's defeated, and I think that's when Drolta kind of takes over the power of Sekhmet and becomes like, I don't know, Super Shredder, basically.
Yeah, so basically what happens is, you know, Erzbet is, the battle takes a toll on her, Sekhmet / Annette is totally broken her psyche, while the rest have beaten her body. She's beaten to hell. Drolta grabs her before, the final blow can be dealt upon her, and just decides, you know what, you are not, she completely backstabs Erzbet and decides, you know what, you were not the goddess I thought you were in after all. So you know what? I'm going to be the vessel for Sekhmet. Completely just whatever, of course. Pulls a whole Dracula death combo Portrait of Ruin situation and becomes Mega Drolta.
Yeah.
Yeah, for all
Which
intents
sounds
and
like a
purposes.
freaking Power Ranger monster.
It's like a Pokemon Mega Evolution, if you will.
The comparison that I made to Super Shredder to me is more fitting.
Oh yeah, it's
essentially
accurate.
taking the ooze and drinking it or pouring it on herself, and then she becomes Super Shredder basically.
Where except the ooze is the blood of Sekhmet.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So Erzbet is dead at that point, right? She's done.
As far as we know, she's
a fraud.
Yeah, she literally was thrown aside, and as we get into episode 8, A Line of Great Heroes, you are basically introduced to now we're all focusing on Drolta, but also Richter, Just, and Maria are tapped out, and Sekhmet Annette is kind of worn out too. She's burning up because I guess the goddess presence in Annette is burning her up in the meantime over the course of this possession. So
then like making her
literally, So then you have Alucard suddenly come back because he had been fighting Drolta and then was helping Mizrak and doing a whole bunch of stuff because hey, Mizrak got stabbed, by the way, and that sets up the sad for Olrox.
Yeah, Olrox comes back at that point.
Yep, Olrox, of course, comes back. We all knew he was going to because he loves Mizrak. And he at least, turns into his badass, Aztec form, Aztec snake god form, and just puts the beat down on Drolta, but then Mizrak gets stabbed. Olrox goes to his aid, fights off the Shadow Mephistopheles Old Man Coyote thing.
Old Man Coyote?
Oh, he called him a couple of things, but he called him Old Man Coyote.
An old man, yeah.
Yeah, it called him. Yeah, it's this kind of the same name or different names for the same entity.
He's many.
I just figured it was death incarnate,
It is something that obviously they're setting up for. So then Alucard pieces out so he can go fight Mecha Drolta. And I said Mega Drolta. See, Power Rangers. There we go. Yeah. It's not that far off, really.
Yeah.
Basically goes right back into the fight, the big fight, and more fighting, which we all loved.
Yes.
Didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah. And then after that part, that's when another side note is Richter is literally cooling Annette, trying to keep her cool. So
with his ice, that's right.
Yeah, with his ice power. So he ends up getting burned on like his face, his arms, and everything. And after the fight, when Drolta's defeated, they end up going to get some aloe. Like Annette gets aloe for him from like an aloe plant, and then they're on a boat, if I recall, and.
Well, let's not get that far quite yet.
I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah. So
the fight itself is very well done. I think if anything, it felt the most like Castlevania in the moment when Richter and Alucard are side by side. You have your Hellfire reference. I mean, I'm the biggest Alucard fan on the planet, so saying Hellfire was really cool. And Richter's doing a couple of I think he does the slide attack that he can do in stuff like Symphony and Portrait of Ruin, for example.
Yeah, and his eyes turn like blood red too.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. From just like Dracula in the original show.
Right.
So the fight itself was really well done, and I think Drolta, as an at least as a punching bag for both of them to showcase their abilities, she worked. But I think the same for Elizabeth. To be honest, I would not say they are necessarily as intimidating as someone like Dracula, or even someone with the presence as Death in the original show in season 4.
Yeah.
I think she is a good opponent for them, especially because you saw how much they were building up to Drolta throughout season 2, and she's even undermining, of course, her mistress. What's her face? I keep wanting to say Elizabeth. Elizabeth. You see, like she's doing more, and she has the movement with her, and yeah, I think we're all on the same page when I say the fight was legitimately very cool. A lot of cool moments,
and the payoff, which whether you're happy with it or not, ends up with Annette.
All the Annette stuff gets the payoff.
Annette is the one that ends up doing the final deed, as she's possessed by Sekhmet, and basically you find out the whole thing that Drolta was doing, her entire quest for the last 600, almost 700 years has been for naught, because Sekhmet was like, why did you do this? And Drolta's like, I thought this is what you wanted. She's like, how did you think that trying to put my body into that of an undead murdering vampire corpse was a good idea? And so yeah, Sekhmet ends up just taking them both out to balance the scales, and that's how that ends, with basically Drolta's entire mission this throughout seasons 1 and 2 being for naught.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, it didn't feel super satisfying to me.
No.
But maybe it did to others. Again, that's just a matter of taste. And so yeah, then everybody's good. The day is saved, except Olrox turns Mizrak into a vampire.
Yeah.
Also didn't feel super satisfying, but
nope.
Again,
why?
Others may think differently. And it's not that they are together. It's that it just, I don't know. It felt their whole dynamic in season 2 felt just very forced, and I didn't feel satisfied with it like I did with season 1. I liked their dynamic in season 1. Anyway,
there's a little bit of cat and mouse in season 1, but in this I feel like there's not much to work with.
Yeah, but it felt less catty than it does in season 2.
It feels like if you date someone and 6 months in, you're like, wait, I don't even know who you are. But you're still staying with them. And I feel like Mizrak getting turned into a vampire goes against everything that Mizrak stood for.
Stands for, exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
He doesn't necessarily get a satisfying or honorable death in any way. No. But again, he is now left open to potential future season development. So that's all we'll touch upon with regards to that. Yeah. And then, as you had so pointed out about, then Richter and Annette decide they're gonna, go back to the Caribbean.
Right. Yeah. Maria is gonna stay behind and fight the French Revolution, or the war, basically.
With Alucard and Juste as well.
Right. Yeah. Alucard stays behind as well. So Annette and Richter get on this boat and they sail away, and it's left ending in like a happily ever after sort of thing.
Kinda, sorta, yeah. There is a little moment where we see Mephistopheles and the very unhinged looking Terra looking at Maria, which is obviously set up for season 3, and of course that leads me to believe that we're not getting anything near Symphony of the Night, if anything. This looks to be another original
We didn't even
story.
get Rondo. I mean,
Not even, no, not
we
at
at least
all.
yeah, but at least we thought we were getting Symphony. Once
If
Alucard
any
showed up,
Castlevania game had a chance, it was Symphony.
it
and
was
we
Symphony.
didn't get that. Yeah.
And that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I thought was interesting. Was I thought we were going to get like a closer adaptation to Symphony of the Night, because that was, heck, we were all kind of calling that since the end of season 4 of the OG series.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know how you get there from here, so kind of feels like it was a squandered opportunity.
Well, I'm gonna say
If they somehow do, it's not going to feel genuine because of things in the original show, like Dracula being a good person apparently now after he's revived, which we can go into in a bit.
And so that's its own thing, and so they've got some very loose things to play
they
with.
want to do Symphony, to be honest. It's just gonna, if they do season 3, it's just gonna be another original story, I feel like, with everything that they've set up here.
Here's what I'll say about it. When it comes to the adaptation of Nocturne being what we all wanted, which was an adaptation of Rondo, it very much, I'm going to repeat myself from the first season Roundtable, where I said, okay, this was a crazy, weird season. It didn't feel like Castlevania, for sometimes
it's going somewhere, maybe.
for sometimes whole episodes. But I think that this leads us to Rondo. Like maybe Maria gets captured again, and Annette gets captured, and then Richter's got to go into the castle and save her, and then maybe Shaft resurrects Dracula. Like, all of that was a possibility, even with those other two big bads kind of, doing this whole segment thing. And so now that season 2 is over, I once again am like, okay, so we have the Dark Priest Shaft, who's going to be resurrected. Emmanuel is going to be resurrected as the Dark Priest Shaft, and by a old man Coyote or Wile E. Coyote or whatever his name is, and then that will lead us down the resurrection of Dracula, because that is what is missing ultimately from the show. And when I watched this series, Nocturne specifically, the entire time I'm like, they're just missing the point of what of what the
Castlevania
core,
is.
what the core of Castlevania is, which is Belmonts or good guys versus Dracula. Like, Dracula is the end boss in almost every single Castlevania, every mainline entry in the series. So where was Dracula? And that is what so many hardcore fans of the franchise, of the game franchise, are wondering. And so maybe the season 3 will lead us down that path, but at this point in time, I can't say for sure how that's going to happen.
Honestly, it feels a little too late, in my opinion, because we've gone so many years. And on the record, I will say Dracula in Netflixvania was handled pretty well. I think it was great. But I think we're at a point now where it's just like, this is fundamentally not understanding what Castlevania is. And I'm going to be a little bit harsh in saying that I think this absolutely fails as an adaptation or anything close to what Castlevania is fundamentally. I mean, you have the mythos of the generations of Belmonts and Dracula, intertwined by fate battling. Like, there is stuff to pull from. And that's why when people are like, oh, the games have no story, the games have no lore, in my opinion, it's
I hate
like,
it when people
you just
say
have
that.
I can't stand it, bro. It's like, you just have to look a little closer, because there is so much depth to what this series, what the game series is conveying. And you can tell that the people making this show are just not willing, or they just don't care enough to look that deep into it to pull from anything. They're using at this point the Castlevania IP to tell their own original story. It's just it's just how it is. And these characters, they don't resemble who they're based on. I mean, Olrox is, you'd never guess it, but he's supposed to be a reference to Nosferatu, and you don't get any of that here, for example.
No,
or homage to it.
And I understand that they can't always be one for one with the character.
Oh yeah, no one I think was asking for that. Yeah, even with Castlevania 3, there was more of an understanding to what Castlevania was, even if reluctantly a lot of times. Once you but now, no.
Once you abandon that core aspect of what Castlevania is, it's like if you did a Mario movie and you put
no Bowser or Peach.
Like no Bowser, no Peach, or like you make Peach the bad guy. Like, like, and I know there are like Mario RPG games that do like, that sort of thing or whatever. But like, at its core, what Mario is Mario versus Bowser, right? Mega Man. What Mega Man is Mega Man versus Dr. Wily.
Dr. Wily.
Right? Or some sort of evil doctor like Dr. Cossack, etc. Castlevania is Belmonts / good guys, Belnades, whatever, family, versus
the forces of evil versus the forces of good, whether that be through Dracula or the corruption that's corrupting him. There's a lot more to it. Yeah.
Correct. So once you lose Dracula as a core component of what Castlevania is, I really think that is the linchpin of the franchise. You can have all the Belmonts in the world in these adaptations, but if there are no Dracula representations for them to fight, then the show doesn't mean as much, or really just abandons the core concept of what Castlevania is. And I really ultimately feel like the writers are to blame in the aspect of, I think that they think we would be bored with seeing the bad guy be Dracula again. And it's like
you do Castlevania without Dracula. I want to add that as well, because it's a little bit like, just like for an example, Mega Man. Like you can do Mega Man without Dr. Wily, just like we see in like the Mega Man X games, or for something like Castlevania to reference, like in the Sorrow games with Graham and that big boss at the end of Dawn of Sorrow. Like Order of Ecclesia has Dracula, but there are good Castlevania games that don't necessarily have Dracula as the main antagonist. Well, in something like the Sorrow games, you're playing as him, but that's a little different. You can do it without Dracula, and you can evolve on what Castlevania is. It doesn't have to always, every single time, be the same thing. And that's what I think a lot of people are failing to understand as well, that this does not add or evolve to Castlevania. It takes away from what Castlevania is at every single turn, and it's to the point where it just doesn't resemble it at all. You can tell a very compelling Castlevania story that doesn't have to do with the Belmonts, but it can still be within this mythos. I mean, I think of Order of Ecclesia, for example, just as like a narrative in Castlevania that doesn't really involve Dracula too much until the very end, where it's a more personal story, but it's still rooted in this mythology, and you still get so much world building and time with these characters. And that's just like an example off the top of my head.
And learning when I did the interview with Shotaro Ieda, and we learned that originally Order of Ecclesia was supposed to be a side story, like a Gaiden entry in the series. It made so much more sense, that this story doesn't have, like Dracula as the core component of the evil
or the Belmonts, but it still feels like Castlevania.
Right, exactly. So you're absolutely right. You can do it, but it needs to be
not like this.
it needs to be a delicate process, and also keep in mind that Order of Ecclesia was essentially, I mean, technically, the last entry in the series in terms of a everybody, like all the heroes gather to fight one big bad, like, Harmony of Despair or, Grimoire of Souls.
Grimoire of Souls.
Yeah, like, or Judgment or whatever. But in terms of core concepts of this is the final entry in the series in terms of the last one that was released, you had all these other games that came out over the years that were like a Belmont versus Dracula, you know. So there was an immense lead up to Order of Ecclesia, you know, having, you know, that separation of the Belmonts and separation of Dracula as the main bad guys. But again, that's like the 15th game or something like that, or 13th game or whatever in the franchise. So telling those kind of side stories makes sense. But here you don't have that. You just immediately lose Dracula, and it's like, well, that doesn't make sense, especially if you're trying to adapt Rondo, which I don't care how loose you want to interpret Rondo. The core concept of Rondo is Dracula gets resurrected and then defeated by Richter Belmont. If you don't have that, then it's not Rondo to me.
I would like to add as well, even as its own thing, as if we take the Castlevania name out of this, if we take even, you know, some of the very little music, which is a huge part of Castlevania's identity.
We'll get to that.
And that's, yeah.
I know Sintra's got a bone to pick with that.
Oh, no, for sure, yeah. Even as its own thing, there is the writing is a huge downgrade, and it doesn't resolve like anything from the original show. As a list of things that I came up with when I was watching it, you know, the Infinite Corridor stuff, I mean, we're probably never going to find out what the heck that was about.
Oh yeah.
And then Dracula and I wrote down Dracula and Lisa's legacy and Dracula's legacy. In the first episode, Alucard talks about killing Dracula, but that means that he still doesn't know if Dracula's alive or not. So they could save having good guy Dracula or somehow him turning bad later, but that would just be very contrived and undermine a lot of what the original show did, looking at this as its own thing. So I don't think they set themselves up well at all. Isaac's legacy, for example, Isaac was one of the highlights of the original show, and you know, we don't hear anything about him. The Belmont hold, we have not seen that, and we probably won't if this. You know, I like the Belmont hold. I think it's a good idea, especially to have Dracula's castle on top and all the Belmont stuff below. It's a really cool thing that I wish like the games might have done, for example. Like, that's a really cool original idea, and they just don't show that. I put the lesbian vampires. I forgot their names, but they should still be alive in this time period.
Stroll?
Something like the one with the Daybreak armor. I think so. And I would have assumed they would have popped up. They would have popped up like in season 1, but there's just no resolution for stuff like that. And lastly,
I think is what her name.
Yes.
yes. And, I cared less about them popping back up. I just assumed that eventually they died.
Yeah, just like a nod or something.
By a Belmont, you know. I think taking Nocturne as its own thing, you kind of have to abandon a lot of the things that were left over from the original
especially
series.
Now. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
And then the Morning Star, I think, having that where, you know, it was such a significant weapon in the original series. And I think they did a good job presenting it. And for Richter's main source of combat, at least, well, his main source of combat here is magic, to be honest. But for him using the vampire killer, you know, so the most iconic piece of imagery in Castlevania in general as a weapon, he's using this normal whip. I mean, I don't even know if it's called the vampire killer in this continuity, to be honest. But the Morning Star missing was a little bit unfortunate. I think most everyone thought Juiced would have it. It just never showed up, which is pretty unfortunate considering how much legacy the whips in Castlevania have, and they just don't touch that at all here, even as its own thing.
That would have been cool if the Morning Star was like in Juiced's possession and he gave it to Richter.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it would show up now, and Richter and Juice would be like, "Here you go, Richter. I've been holding on to this. I think you're worthy now. I've seen you grow up. You know, watching you in the shadows and stuff. I think you have this in the bag now." And just a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I ultimately... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the same. You know, basically, some of what you guys were saying is just, all in all, you know, Nocturne Season 2 felt, you know, even less connected to Castlevania than Season 1 did for me. Because, you're still not hearing, where's the Morning Star? Where's the Belmont Hold? Where's Castlevania? Where's the damn castle of Dracula?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my gosh.
Is it still in Richter's?
When they're... go ahead.
Is it still in Alucard's possession? I mean, there's this huge gap of knowledge we still don't know.
Yeah.
And, could they revisit that for season 3? Sure. But they didn't know season 3 was ever going to be a thing, so why, guys?
there's
Why
also-
have that be a thing, an open-ended question? But it's just a little thing that kind of peeked into the back of my head.
Just something popped into my head just now, and I just realized it, and maybe I just missed it, but is there any explanation for how Alucard knows to show up to find, like, we know that he was looking in episode 1
In Egypt, yeah.
for, he finds Sekhmet's blood and everything, but do we get any kind of, like, knowledge that he knows, they're in France, they're in Paris, like, is there
Probably just try. I would not in the show, but I would assume that he was just tracking her forces. But for me
Yeah, I
to even make
guess.
that assumption is just doing the writer's work for them,
Well, but that's part of the problem with this show.
Yes,
is
absolutely.
There is so much that is left unanswered,
Good question
and
for another
it's-
time.
and it's just assumed. Like
Yeah.
that breaks the cardinal rule of story writing in any sort of medium, which is show, don't
tell.
and so all we're seeing is him just showing up, and that's great, but why? They should have done a better job of showing us how Alucard, and maybe they could have instead of having all these intro scenes with Drolta, which I didn't mind, so to speak. I mean, they all felt pointless in the end, just with that final line
for
where
sure.
she's like, I thought this is what you wanted. Like, no, dummy. Like, I didn't want that.
Well, I think, the writers absolutely knew what stories they wanted to
tell.
focus on
Yeah.
with this season. And surprisingly enough, it wasn't Alucard's who got the most spotlight.
Yeah.
Which was a bit of a surprise for me, but
Agreed.
I digress. So yes, there's a ton of unanswered questions. There's a ton of plot holes and just vague assumptions that were supposed to be made about all this other stuff in a universe that had a whole other 4 seasons of a whole other show worth of backstory that we've kind of hand-waved, but whatever. Either way, this is how season 2 of Nocturne turned out, and we've gone over a ton of the negatives of this season. What did we think the positives were?
Before we jump into the positives, there's one more negative about Juste that I wanted to bring up, and this again goes back to the show Don't Tell. Why was there no animated story in either season 1 or
Flashback.
season 2 with a flashback of old
Yes.
school Juste?
And Maxim,
And
yeah,
Maxim.
going through Harmony of Despair against
Yeah.
The
that would have been cool.
the answer to that question is because we can't have nice things.
Right.
Yes.
Or even animation of, because we had this lovely animation, which this will kind of go into the positive, but
In the other flashback,
yeah,
yeah.
we had a wonderful flashback of Kid Richter and Kid
That scene was really
Maria.
cute.
That scene was great. You know what I mean? And,
Absolutely adorable. Absolutely adorable.
I love that, and I would have
Yeah.
loved to see more of that. Even if we
Yes.
could get a scene of, dare I say it, a Simon and
Juice mentions him, kind
Yeah.
of, sort of, at the ending, but it's like a hand away, blink and you'll miss it
And
reference.
just like those little memories, just to give us a little bit more of backstory,
Yeah.
Right.
connective tissue. Give us
I
that
should
bow.
not be looking
Throw us
for
that
stuff
bow,
like that,
guys.
just show me that though. That was my big complaint, is instead of you telling me through the characters telling me, oh yeah, I remember, your grandfather, put it up on the screen. Show me a memory of just meeting Alucard for the very first time. That would have
Yeah.
just made the show so much more interesting to me, because it
There
really
are
would've-
literally 2, yeah.
and it would have paid so much more respect to the Belmont legacy and how that ties into Alucard's legacy. We get these grand stories about how Alucard, traveled the world and went to Japan and this and that. But again, it's all hearsay. It's all just him being like, I remember when I did that. And then there's no flashback. It's like Wayne's World with the flashback moments, but there's no flashback moments. So you're just all kind of left like, what are you looking up at the sky for? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
that's the vibe that I.
Yes, I did all of these things. ...
Dot. Right.
Okay, okay, now we're on to the next topic. Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, positives. Let's do it. I
Oh
gotta
man,
say,
I still had negatives too.
well, yeah, we could do the music.
It's okay.
We didn't even touch on the music, which I don't know, Sindra, if you want to jump into that. 'Cause I know...
all I wanted to say was there was some licensed, I think, music in there, but I know one of them was a Baroque piece to begin with. It's Henry Purcell. The Cold song, it was playing after Maria lost control of the dragon. And they wanted, I guess that must have been a better piece for, by the way, we barely said anything about Edouard this entire Roundtable. By the way, he was.
That goes to show his position in the plot.
He was
sang
pretty
a
much
bunch.
he was pretty much an afterthought in this season. Again, that goes to what I was saying about you could only focus on so many characters when you have 8 episodes to half an hour each to tell your story. So
I mean, they had that female lead soldier get converted into
the ice shade, the frozen shade.
Frozen shade, which was sick.
One enemy reference out of like an entire Pokédex,
which was awesome, and that was literally the only night creature that I was like, oh, I know that one.
Only one.
But anyway, so I was just like, man, why are they having this music in the show when they could have had Castlevania music?
Right.
And that's just will always be like one of my prime nitpicks about these shows is like, man, you have all this music at your fingertips, and we know Konami's got to be licensing, giving away licenses for them because
all the crossovers,
all the crossover games, Vampire Survivors, and Dead by Daylight, and it's just like, come on, guys. Instead, they reused Bloodlines from season 1. They just reused it again. It's like, okay. Anyway,
I think it is a remix, but I felt nothing, honestly.
And I will always begrudge that of this show that they don't use more of the music, but that's just me. So anyway, back to the positives.
Yeah, I feel like we're just eternally gonna keep going back to negatives.
It's just I don't think any of us really. We don't hate the show.
Right.
We're
all very disappointed and frustrated. Agreed.
100%.
Because it's not Castlevania. Yeah, there were 2 episodes that are called Ancestors and A Line of Great Heroes, and I was like gonna get hype. I was like, oh wait, are we actually gonna see, like, if you guys have seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, like a vision of maybe the past Belmonts or something along those lines? And no, it's just Unett stuff, which I was a little bit, not for me.
Yeah. Like I was gonna say, we're just very disappointed and frustrated by what these shows could be.
Yeah.
And it's just that's really what it comes down to. We're just a bunch of bitchin' nerds.
Yeah, pretty much.
Who love this series very much, and we just want it. We just want to see more connective tissue between these two things, because we know it's possible. Super Mario Brothers movie did it.
Sonic,
you can do it with.
That was a Mario movie if I've ever seen one.
If you want to talk,
sure.
if you don't, that's
Even
why
Sonic.
that is why the whole argument of, well, the Castlevanias don't really have much story. That's why this is where that argument falls apart, because the Mario movie. Yeah, there you go. The Super Mario Brother movie.
Yeah.
Where's your argument?
The Sonic movie as well.
That was the big thing about that movie.
There-
Do you guys remember that? The Mario movie, like, a lot of people, when the movie came out, were like, nothing really happened, or like the plot wasn't really like deep. It's like, it's Mario. Like,
yeah, it was still a fun time as well.
Oh yeah, it was super fun, but like Castlevania has such a rich
so
history,
much more depth,
way more depth, and it just was unused for the most part. But anyways, positives, animation. I wanted to bring up animation. Aside from some weird nitpicky details that I had, like there's another fisheye lens shot in episode 3.
Yes, I noticed that too. I knew you'd point that out too.
This time with Unett, and
it's like Evangelion.
It just looks terrible. And then like Maria, when they're trying to make her look evil, there's moments where like she just looks like she has dirt on her face. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't get that. There's also other moments. I promise I'm going to go positive in a minute. There's also other moments where like the animation on the characters doesn't seem to blend in with the backgrounds, which is a shame because the backgrounds are absolutely stunning in this show for the most part. They're really, really impressive, and I like the attention to detail to hair in this series, particularly on Alucard and Maria. Like, the hair looks amazing. The special effects look great. There's a lot more use of CG this time around, where you have, like, you know, when they, in the very first episode, when they go to Sekhmet's tomb, and you see, like, you know, there's like a 3D, you know, kind of CG look.
That scene was really good in general as well. The choreography.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And all the choreography on the fight scenes is excellent. Like, all the
very,
animation
very good
on the characters is, for the most part, aside from like some minor gripes that I had, the animation on this was great. The only thing I'll say is Alucard doesn't look like Alucard in the first series. So, I mean, if you, you know, as much depth that they want to give characters like Maria and Terra, like, you look at their eyes and they're just incredible. Like, you can get lost in their eyes when it comes to the animation, the visual style and everything. You know, there's just so much there just in the characters' eyes. But, man, like, why does Alucard look completely different from that first season? I feel like they should have done a better job of lining him
translating it.
Yeah. He looks super pale.
I think if he did have his design in Symphony of the Night, it might be a little too difficult to animate fluidly because referencing Avatar again, I think I did mention it for the first roundtable we did as well, but having the characters a little bit more simplified makes them, when they do go, you know, sicko mode crazy during the fights, it's more simpler to animate that and color that especially. I know there are moments, especially in the first series, where the characters are a little bit more detailed, and you can see how in the moments when they're just talking normally, like they're just completely standing still, and that was also probably a budget thing. But here, they are a little more animated because of how a little more simpler their designs are. I think, you know, Juiced and Richter, I think they look okay, but I don't know. I had my issues with it. Yeah, but the animation, I agree, overall is genuinely fantastic.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Sindra?
You know, I thought it was good in some places and kind of weak in others. I don't feel very strongly one way or the other. I thought, you know, the fight scenes absolutely were great, but you know, you can see the cracks. And
for sure.
You know, again, you know, that's fine. I don't feel super strongly one way or the other. You know.
Yeah,
if they had more meat on their bones for the story,
the only thing I will say, and I apologize to interrupt, that the backgrounds continue to look gorgeous. Whatever you think about the animations, the backgrounds for the scenes continue to be very well done. So I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The best fights in the original show had emotional weight behind it. It had characters that we care about, and it had moments where, like for example, the best fight, I think, in the original show, Alucard versus his dad. There's so much at stake there because the writing's backing the fighting, and Nocturne doesn't really have that. It just has all the super cool fighting. And I think if the writing was stronger, then the action would be even stronger. And oh my gosh, if we had the combination of good writing, the action that's already here, and the music, I mean, we wouldn't even be complaining.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I mean, the show is strongest when it shuts up. I hate to say that.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. The writing is just not up there.
Right. And like the fight scenes were so incredible. The action was great. You know, it overall, and I will say, even though there are some problems which have always kind of plagued it ever since season 3 with pacing, and there was a lot of padding on this series. You know,
so much,
particularly with this season. This season was padded terribly, particularly with Annette. And the vague messages at the, you know, throughout the episodes where you're just like, spit it out already. Like, stop wasting our time on this. But Overall, I think season 2 was an improvement on season 1. I can at least say that I felt more connection with the characters on season 2, and I would say that I was really excited to see Just in action and kind of get out of his funk. And I think them adding Just really brings a lot more connective tissue to the franchise just in general, kind of leading back to the games, all the heavy references to, the earlier Belmonts and everything. So in that aspect, I feel like Just was kind of the remembrance of, hey, this is Castlevania.
I agree with that. I thought Alucard would be that person, if anything, and he is a little bit, but this version of Alucard is definitely more of his own thing.
Yeah.
I think I wanted to point out a moment in episode, I think it was episode 8, the last one, that kind of sums up a lot of what this series has become. As we all know, when you beat most all of the Castlevania video games, a morning sun has vanquished the horrible night. You see your protagonist or the group of protagonists or whoever you're playing as look out to the sunset and see usually Castlevania crumbling in the distance, and it's always a really cathartic moment, and you see them usually always talking to each other and reminiscing about the adventure. And they did that in the original show when there was actually Castlevania the Castle was there. And they do that in season 2, but it's in the courtyard, and they're just looking at some random building, and it's like, oh, how far we've fallen. They're just looking. It's the shot where they're all lined up together, and they're all like kind of picking each other up, and then they look to the sunset at this random building they were fighting next to, and that's that. And I think that sums up a lot of how I personally, and I'm sure most of us felt about this series, as someone, because we all love Castlevania, and that's where we're coming from. Like I said in the beginning of this, we all care about this series so much, and to see it being used for something like, it feels like it's being used to tell something that doesn't feel like Castlevania anymore. And yes, there are references, yes, there are nods, yes, there are moments when it's like, okay, this is Castlevania, but the majority of the time it's like, why is this called Castlevania? It doesn't feel like it at all.
There were some great Easter eggs overall.
Yes, the Easter eggs were cute, but it's like a show called Castlevania. I should not be being fed breadcrumbs, I should be eating a steak dinner, But that's just my perspective for something like it. I think if the intentions of the original series after season 2 were different, like for example, if we got just in an alternate timeline, if we had gotten the movie, or if we had gotten something more akin to Curse of Darkness, or even if they just did their own story in the original series. And one thing about Nocturne that I think it really, really hinders a lot of its potential is its connection to the mainline Castlevania series. I'm going to do something, Dongle, that you're not going to like, but I'm going to compliment Lords of Shadow, because Lords of Shadow, I feel like, as a Castlevania experience, is more honest and genuine about it wanting to present a new story, because it's using an original Belmont.
Sure.
It's using an original setting with original, with these A-list voice actresses, for example. This is inherently connected to the mainline Castlevania series that we all know and love. This is inherently connected to that mythology that, that has been around for more than, 30 years now. It's always going to be attached to that. And because it is, it's supposed to. They're using that as a framework.
Well, that's what an adaptation is supposed to be. You are adapting from, one type of thing to another. And, there is the assumption there that there is a fair amount of connective muscle there from the original source to be able to call it an adaptation. And honestly, these are more like the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movies towards the end of that line in terms of like I said, we keep using the term connective tissue, but the connectivity between the games and the adaptation media.
Great comparison. Great comparison.
I have so much adaptation fatigue across the various franchises I have grown up with, but so I guess from here, is Netflixvania, is this series redeemable? Or I guess is the better question is is there a better direction we would like it to go in that is any different than just have more in connection with the game. You know, is there
Yeah.
a way that they
yeah.
could course correct? Like you said, you kind of brought it up, Dongle.
Yeah.
Course correcting to something more akin to a plot point from the game with Rondo, which, you know, is that possible? I think it's a long shot at this point.
Agreed. Agreed.
I think they need to significantly change what they do. The way that the show is written, I don't know any behind
In the way they
scenes.
approach it, yeah.
I don't know any behind the scenes details in terms of. I did read some interesting articles, which I think you, Stock, sent or posted to our chat, where we were kind of going through it, reading about, you know, Sam Dietz and Adam Dietz got interviewed. I don't know who it was, like IGN or something like that, but they got interviewed about, you know, the show. And what I was really interested in looking for there was like how the series is written, so to speak. And knowing that each episode or most episodes are written individually by certain people, they're credited to certain people. One of,
Yes.
I think it was episode 2, was credited to Testament, which I was like, oh, this band Testament's writing Castlevania now. Interesting. But all these episodes, Clive...
Wait, what, really?
Yeah, it's... No. I was joking. Like, Testament, the band
Oh
is
my
not... It's credited to Testament. The name of the person that wrote episode 2 is Testament.
I'm okay. Yeah, sorry, missed that, and it's late at night.
No, I got you.
Fatigue. So I'm like, oh my god, what?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah,
How did I miss that?
Wouldn't that be funny if it was? That'd be great. You know,
That's a little wild.
Chuck Billy
Anyway.
is a great writer or whatever. Anyways,
Well, and here's the thing, you know, just to touch upon, you know, obviously they're doing something quote unquote right, because it's got 100% on Rotten
It is appealing
Tomatoes
to
right
someone,
now.
yes.
It's got the 92% on the popcorn meter for whatever you want to, you know, well, however much weight you want to put behind that. There, obviously, something is being done. Like, I'm using finger quotes, right?
yeah.
It might not be right for Castlevania Castlevania fans, but it's apparently right for somebody. So there is, you know,
We
you
are
gotta.
the odd man out, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes.
We are unfortunately not going to get what we want, and I think that's fine. I think we're all still going to watch the show. You know, I don't think anything could get worse than season 3 of the original series, which just man, the pacing and just, I mean, we could go into it for, you know, a whole other podcast, but
Boy, howdy.
that would be fun.
Yeah.
But I do think that the show is redeemable only if they change how the show is written. And when I say that, I mean, you either need to have just one person writing the show that, you know, is going to start utilizing the games more, like
As a framework.
yeah. As the primary framework. Like, oh, we're gonna do Rondo now, so let's introduce all these characters that sync up with Rondo. And listen, you can introduce new characters. Nobody is saying that it needs to be one for one.
No,
but
please do.
Nobody ever asked for one for one.
Like,
Yeah, the original first 2 seasons were not one for one, but they were pretty solid, you know, all things considered.
Like, give me Mizrak, give me Eduardo, give me, you know, all these other characters. And hell, I didn't even mind, like, you know, like, I thought Isaac was great in the first series.
Agreed. He was my favorite after a while, yeah.
Yeah, but like I think the thing that they did different with Isaac that they didn't do with Annette and Drolta and et cetera, is the core concept of who Isaac wasn't so drastically separated from
Castlevania.
From Castlevania. Like, yeah,
Agreed.
they had all these, like, the slave moments and everything, but that led up to, this is why I am who I am and why I'm serving Dracula, which that is Isaac. Like, Isaac is serving Dracula in the games. Like, that is the basic elements.
And he is devoted to Dracula in the games too.
Yeah.
You know, there is
I
obviously
think his redemption's good too.
there's huge differences between other portions of what the characters are between the two.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
you know,
they did
the core
ruin Hector. I mean, we won't.
we won't. No,
we're not going to get into that.
No. It'll be fun for a long time. Yeah.
You know, and the only there's none of that with Annette, which, you know, again, whatever. There was only so much to begin with, but
that
it's
whole
like
episode in season 1 where I was like, am I even watching Castlevania anymore? Like,
Literally,
you know what I mean?
literally.
And I get that they were building up to the Spirit Quest and everything, but the Spirit Quest in season 2 completely deflated every other character because it took up so much time, and its only purpose was to say, hey, we have a weapon that can beat Sekhmet, in either Drolta form or Urzbeth form. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that was the only thing that it did. And because of that, all the other characters in the show started to suffer. Richter became basically a babysitter for Annette. He fought a little bit, but like he just completely felt deflated. So that completely, again, abandons the concept of who is supposed to kill the big bad. Who is that identity that is supposed to kill the big bad? And I had a problem with that in the original series. It was a little bit more respectable because it was a son killing his father, meaning Alucard killing Dracula. But having Annette kill the big bad, it just felt like such an abandonment of who Richter should have been in this series, which is a Belmont. Which there's all this talk about, the Belmonts are legendary and this and that, but their actions don't speak louder than their words.
Especially their results and feats.
I mean, and the whole thing just fell off. It just fell off. But again, this whole thing is probably just not going to be for us.
I'm gonna
the end.
I'm gonna ask you guys one question, which is a 2-part question. That's kind of what we'll end on because I know we're running late. But for each of you, what series or what game in the franchise do you not want them to adapt because you're just either so passionate about it or you're just like, don't touch my baby? Or what series or what game do you want them to adapt next if Netflixvania is going to continue?
Well, from what I've seen on social media, I know the Dietz brothers are passionate. They did strategy guides for the DS games, and I know Portrait of Ruin is one that they both like. So I would want them to do that. If anything, I think there is at least going into it. Portrait of Ruin, yeah.
Okay.
I think if anything, and I only say that because I know there are people working on the show with some form of understanding to the material, and that was definitely, it did not feel like the case for Nocturne at all. And as far as what I did not want them to adapt, it's not necessarily a game, more of a lore thing that I'm sure I've yapped about plenty since I started my YouTube channel. But 1999, I don't want them anywhere near that.
Oh, for sure.
It cannot be done in the continuity, the Demon Castle War, with this version of Dracula, with these versions of the characters.
Yeah.
It would be an abhorrent abomination of what that concept fundamentally is. Sindra, I know in the past, Sindra, you were like, in the past Sindravania, you were like, that's Koji Igarashi's baby. And I completely agree. Like, I would want him or someone, akin to that, those developers to approach that story before anything close to something like an adaptation were to be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, fan game is one thing, but like Ieda and Igarashi would need to be taking the reins back to do something like that.
Yeah, and in this version of the continuity, oh hell no. I wrote in my notes real quick, I wrote in my notes as all the Annette and Spirit stuff was happening, I was like, who plays the Whip's Memory boss in Portrait of Ruin and writes this after? Like, who plays that?
Here's the problem with doing Portrait.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with doing Portrait. I'll just say this. You can't do Portrait because you ruined Bloodlines. Because you took all the characters out of...
right. Oh, no.
You took all the good characters out of Bloodlines and you ruined...
Bingo.
You know what I mean? So Bloodlines isn't getting done because they'd be like...
That's why I'm not worried about them touching Bloodlines.
Right.
Yeah,
So I doubt...
Bloodlines. John Morris, my boy. Eric, my boy.
I doubt Portrait gets done. Anyways, Sindra, what about you?
Although just to touch upon that a little bit more, that doesn't doesn't mean a damn thing. I mean, they brought Urzabet and Droll. They brought Bloodlines bosses into Rondo. That's not saying they wouldn't bring other.
They're just pulling from random crap. Honestly,
into Portrait. Let's be honest.
Yeah, true.
They will do whatever they want to.
They'll make Terra the bad guy.
Story, yeah.
They'll make Terra the bad guy.
I mean, they very well could for the next season. We don't know at this point. They could do it. At this point, they really could do damn near anything for season 3.
And people will like it.
And, it won't be surprising because we have absolutely no idea what they're planning on doing because it's all original at this point. But anyway, to answer your question, gripes. I mean, realistically, I don't think they're touching anything I care that they're going to mess up. Or do. I shouldn't say mess up because that's attaching a negative connotation. I'm trying to be fair, as frustrated as this whole.
I think we're all trying to a certain degree.
I'm trying to be respectful. I haven't liked how they've done. What they've done so far. So I don't. I wouldn't want them touching Bloodlines, but they're not going to touch Bloodlines.
Right.
Although they could touch Bloodlines again if they decided to just bring other bosses into it. But, I mean, let's be honest, they could do John Morris and Eric Lacard fighting Giles de Rais, from 64.
Oh, Jill de Rais?
Sorry, that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Jill de Rais. Yeah. That'd be interesting if they did that. But
who knows?
In general, yeah.
They could do that, or they could, whatever. They could absolutely, do Portrait, do Ecclesia.
Ecclesia being a little bit standalone, I think, might give them a little bit more freedom, the freedom that they're looking for in terms of adapting. And everyone loves Shanoa,
Yeah, you don't have to have a Belmont in there to write in a way that might not cater to us Castlevania fans.
For sure.
But
For sure.
because we're such a upper crust crowd.
Right.
I
Okay.
wouldn't. I don't think I'd want them touching anything having to do with like Simon at this point either. Because how do you do that?
I think the opportunity's passed, and the same maybe for Leon. I think if they did do a Lament of Innocence movie or something like that, that could be a return to form. But that's just me coping.
The franchise does best. Based on the writing that we've seen so far, the franchise does best with less.
Yes,
Season
absolutely.
1 and 2, there were less episodes. They had more opportunity to tell more with less, and I think they did a great job overall.
Especially season 1.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well,
so
they didn't need to pad all these episodes with all this other stuff.
Right.
So of course they were able to stick to a more streamlined, simple plot line. So
Agreed.
And of course,
with season 1 has really grown on me.
Maybe don't do 8 episodes of 8 seasons. There are 8 seasons of 8 episodes. Wow, it's been a long episode. Maybe you don't do that. Maybe you do 4 to 6,
or just make a movie.
But
you know what I mean? Making a movie.
I think a movie would work. Yeah.
I think they should switch.
Or
to
miniseries.
Netflix has done animated movies with things like The Witcher.
Yeah, true. I think they should just switch to movies if they're going to continue to do like, make it a sequel, make it a movie, and that way you can write a movie. You don't have to pad it in an episodic format. And it would allow them the opportunity to streamline the series. So to answer the previous question is Netflixvania redeemable? I think yes, if they do that, if they change it to movie format. So
it would kind of force them to be more concise. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Sindra, you said don't touch Simon or Christopher or any of the earlier Belmonts, and do touch Portrait.
Go for Portrait and Ecclesia are pretty decent, and honestly, I'm sure they're going to want to do Arya. It almost it has been kind of in the eye shot range for a while, I think, but who knows?
Considering they skipped all the way to Rhonda, we initially thought they skipped all the way to Rhonda for Symphony, and they might do the same. They're going to skip all the way to Arya and then just do their own thing with those characters.
That is going to lead me into mine to close us out. which is what do I want them to do next? The Sorrow series. Because I really don't care what they do with the Sorrow series because I just don't really like it. Truth be told, I don't like it.
So much slander. That's crazy.
So it's like you want to butcher the Sorrow series? Cool. It just it already feels so far removed from Castlevania to me, so I'm cool with that. Plus, it just makes so much more sense for them to do the Sorrow series because
they're popular.
Well, it's not even that. It's more like the cast of characters in the Sorrow games feels like, you know, it feels so much closer to what the Netflix show is
doing,
in the sense that you will never see a Netflix show where you just follow Simon or you just follow Just or you just follow Reinhard Schneider or whatever. You are not going to see that from a Netflixvania show. There is no solitary hero. There is no solitary journey of a hero. This is not Vampire Hunter D. It is Castlevania and Friends. So you're always going to have an ensemble in this show, and that's just how they write this show because they feel that more compelling characters are better than one really well-rounded character that they can focus on. So
that would take passion and a skilled writer or skilled writers, I should say.
Right.
And I don't know if at least what they're working with right now, you know, there's clearly an intention to do their own thing.
I mean, I don't want to badmouth the writers.
Yeah.
I don't want to badmouth the writers themselves.
Me neither. Yeah, I don't want to be like be ignorant or anything because there are so many talented people that have worked on this show
absolutely.
and that are working on this show.
Oh yeah.
And I think we can all recognize that, and we can all you know give applause to where there is some. But in terms of what to work with, I agree with you, Dongled. I think the Sorrow cast that feels more I would say anime shonen type-ish, and that's something that that they can work with. It might be more in line with it. A game like Rim War of Souls, for example, gives a lot of context and depth to the isolation that Simon Belmont faced. Being alone in his adventure comparing it to people like Alucard and Richter who had help. And I think that was a good way to expand on it, just as an example for something that the mainline Castlevania series has done. And I was like, that's cool when I was playing the game and writing my script for the video, which I hopefully release soon. But
I've got my own too.
And now you can't even play
we all know the
right?
struggle. Yeah. What's up?
Now you can't play Grimoire.
I will delve into it in the video, but it is available on Apple Arcade and will likely be ported this year because that's when the Apple contracts usually expire.
Ooh,
but yeah, it's a whole thing. So I have to release it before then. But yeah, I think there is a lot that they can do with something like the Sorrow games. So I would agree with you there.
Okay, and then what they're not allowed to touch, in my opinion, is similar to Sindra. I don't want them going anywhere near Simon. If they're going to butcher the original games and storylines, granted, if they made a show that was devoted to Simon's, first adventure, Castlevania 1, and then, of course, Simon's Quest, which is my favorite of all the Castlevanias.
I love your retrospective on it, bro. Your video on it.
Thank you. I think ultimately that they could do a phenomenal job of adapting those two games and telling Simon's story accurately. So I don't want them anywhere near that. I also don't want them anywhere near the N64 games. As much as it would be great to see skeletons on motorcycles, but
it's so badass.
It would be great to get more eyes on the original N64 games because they are black sheep of the franchise in so many ways. They're not, canon, based on, whatever. We're not going to get into that, but
and we could.
We absolutely
could. Oh, yeah.
Hey, listen, anytime you guys want to get together,
another time.
But that would go. This has gone on way later than I anticipated.
Another time for sure.
Different roundtable.
But yeah, I don't want them touching the classic first two games, and I don't want them touching the N64 games because I really treasure those titles and those characters, and they're some of my favorites. So I really just don't want them anywhere near them, because I know they won't do them justice. So that's kind of how I feel about it. Yeah. So that's a good place. That's a good place to end it. This has gone on a lot longer than we thought, about 2 hours. But again, I want to thank both Sindra and Stocke for hopping on and chatting some Castlevania Nocturne with me. We all do come from a place of love with this franchise, and that's
absolutely
the message we want to leave. Is even though we may have our gripes with this series, here and there, we do love Castlevania, and that's why we put ourselves through misery to watch 8 episodes or 16 episodes of Nocturne.
Counting season 1, yeah.
Yeah, that we just did not really like overall.
And don't get us wrong. I mean, or at least from my perspective, I am not afraid to josh on the stupidity of Castlevania game, series.
Yes.
Story. It's absolutely ridiculous. So we all understand how
100%,
how nonsensical it can all be. But it's just we still love it. So we want to see it represented as we grew up with it, and that's just where that comes from.
Absolutely. All right, so again, you could check out both Stocke and Sindravania in the links down below. I'll also post the Season 1 Roundtable, so you guys can check that out. That's it. You guys don't need to know about me. You're here on my channel, so, there's a whole playlist of Castlevania and Bloodstained content. So if you're coming into this from the outside and you want more of me, that's where you should go. Thanks everybody for listening, and who knows, maybe we'll get to do a season 3 of this.
Oh man,
who knows?
Oh, exciting.
Oh boy.
Take care, everybody.